For the Beatles, it's George Martin. For Michael Jackson, it's Quincy Jones. For Nirvana, it's Butch Vig. A lot of the biggest artists and bands have one thing in common: a producer they're synonymous with. For the Red Hot Chili Peppers, it's Rick Rubin. But it wasn't until the Chili Peppers were almost a decade old that they found their studio guy that would help propel them to superstardom. What if the Chili Peppers would have been able to get Rubin sooner? Well, it almost happened. By late 1986, the Red Hot Chili Peppers were regarded as a successful touring band, but a disappointment in the studio. Both the releases had been commercial disappointments thus far. The Chili Peppers knew they needed to start selling more records, they just needed to find a way to get their true live sound onto tape. That was their goal in early 1987 as they searched for a new producer for their next album. The Chili Peppers were looking at this young guy out of New York who was red hot and who had made his mark on the hip-hop scene. He saw success bridging the gap between hip-hop and rock with Run DMC's Raising Hell and the Beastie Boys' License to Ill. His name was Rick Rubin, and the Chili Peppers were looking at him to help them get out of a rut. A meeting was set up at a rehearsal room as the Chili Peppers were working on getting songs together for their third album, but it didn't go so well. In an interview later, Rubin looked back at running into the Chili Peppers at this time, saying, quote, "I went to a rehearsal and it was a bad vibe. And I didn't know what was going on, but I knew this wasn't anything I wanted to be a part of. It turns out they were all on a lot of drugs, and I hadn't really been around that. But there was a really uncomfortable feeling in the room, and you could see that the guys in the band didn't trust each other, and that doesn't make really for great music." Anthony later said in a magazine interview, quote, "It was a really dysfunctional time for us, and we were fighting and kind of toxic looking. I think we scared the shit out of him because he said, let's go now." Rubin would later admit that musically it felt really good, but the energy in the room felt dangerous, and the mood in the studio was one of the most depressing feeling rooms he had ever been in. Rubin would ultimately decline to produce the album, and instead the Chili Peppers went with Michael Beinhorn for their third album titled Uplift Mofo Party Plan. It wasn't until 1991 where the band would eventually connect with Rubin again on their album Blood Sugar Sex Magik, by which time enough drama had matured the members of the Chili Peppers and confirmed the wisdom of Rubin postponing working with them. Blood Sugar would launch the band into superstardom, and the Chili Peppers wouldn't work with another producer for the next 25 years.